Welcome to the Moodboard podcast. This is Cesar.
And this is Aaron.
And we are two creatives helping people unlock their creative potential by having meaningful and insightful conversations. And today we wanted to talk about a few creative topics that we have been intrigued by in the past week in regards to what is the key ingredient to a successful innovation, to a successful new idea. We are also going to cover a few topics that Aaron has been into and been learning in the past week.
Yep.
And I would like to ask Aaron, what is that caught your attention this past week?
Oh, okay. Couple things. There is major news in the AI space. One of them being Procreate CEO James Kuda coming out saying that he hates generative AI. And it's one of the big, important creative tools, which is Procreate, the makers of the drawing software for the iPad, saying basically no to generative AI, even saying that they hate it and they're never going to incorporate it. So it's a big major stance for non-AI in a creative product, which is completely the opposite of what Adobe is doing. So that was a major announcement. And then another big thing that has caught my attention is the Grok 2 image generation on Twitter, which is, if you're not familiar with Grok is the AI that Elon Musk and X is working on. And so that is running unhinged. People are generating wild images on there. And so that's opening up an important topic for us. Like, what should these models be put out into the world without a lot of testing? And then the underlying model for that image generation in Grok is open source, so people can use it. I think I was recently watching a video about that, but that is like the major news things that have caught my attention. The other thing that we're going to talk about maybe later on in the conversation is getting to what is the art of a cold introduction to someone that you want to collaborate with or someone that you want to work with, whether it's a potential new client or it's a job opportunity that you want to open up for yourself. How do you make that cold introduction? And yeah, that's going to be the major directions for some of our conversation. But Cesar, I want to get your thoughts on this, because we've talked in previous episodes about this question, is non-AI the new non-GMO? What do you think about Procreate and them going like, hey, we're going to be like Nintendo here and we're going to say no thanks to AI?
So I think this segues from the previous episode where we talk about which tasks should be automated by AI. And I think it touches on that a little bit, and also on us defining and drawing the hard line where, okay, yes, AI is helpful for some things, but it shouldn't replace essential ingredient, or like, how can I say, it shouldn't replace the essence of human creativity.
Right.
We control. That's something that we shouldn't hinder, because we as creatives, we have to train on our craft. We have to sharpen our skills. We have to, learn how to rely on nothing or on no one. And big companies are aware of that. Some companies, some people understand that.
Absolutely. Like Procreate's a really great example.
Because Procreate, their foundation is for people to learn how to create good art, how to become great artists. And you do it by actually doing it by training your eye. You train your eye by training your hand. And I believe if
That's
AI
good.
was to replace that, it would hinder our judgment to make decisions whether something looks good, whether something is balanced, composed. And this is a great topic, great question, because there has been a lot of friction in the educational space in our colleges. I know this from some people that work in the education industry, in teaching arts, design degrees, and all of this. There's been a dilemma where, okay, how much of AI subjects, projects, how much do we incorporate that in the curriculums? It's like I've heard it's a split 50-50, where some teachers are like, no, you come to school to learn the skill. AI is a tool, not the skill. So yes, you can use AI, but that's for your personal process. It's not what you're necessarily going to present as your project, as your assignment. Because they want to teach you how to do it, how to go through the process of doing something. That's the point of going to school. On the other hand, there are teachers that are probably relying a little bit more on AI and trying to make it acceptable to turn in something that is AI generated or rendered by AI. So yeah, it's 50-50. And so they're like wrestling right now with, okay, how much if we put AI on the curriculum, and then how much are we gonna allow it to populate the curriculum?
Yeah.
I would like to hear your thoughts like about that dilemma on education in an education setup, a scenario. For example, we could use SCAD as an example. I wonder how we would have felt if that was happening to us. And then it just crossed my mind, this example. I remember in industrial design, when I was doing my bachelor's, the iPhone just came out. And there were, I saw this pattern of a lot of designers or students, the solution to a problem, oh, it's an application.
Yeah.
So then I was thinking, we're industrial design to design and make objects.
Yeah.
But then everyone is like presenting a 2D solution to a problem that, hey, maybe have you considered creating something like an object or something that could cater or address the issue that you're trying to solve? Not necessarily just an application with a little bit of like hardware support, but a more substantial product offering, like physical product offering. So that to me was the equivalent of today's dilemma scenario with AI. But yes, I would like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So I think that when it comes to human creativity and the ability to create things with one's own mind and one's own hand, I was really impacted during my bachelor's for industrial design as well by this idea that the first exercise that they gave us in prototyping class, which is build this mech suit. For us, it was a mechanical suit of cardboard, tape, and glue, and that's all you can do, and maybe some foam. And what that exercise taught me, how valuable it is to look around at what you have at your disposal and uncover the power of the human mind for solving problems with what you have, right? And so it transformed the way I thought about how just the only thing that you need really is your mind to create with what you have around you, because you don't always have a 3D printer, you always have a manufacturing plant, you don't always have a computer around to do the things that you want to do. And so that exercise, I go back to it again and again, because I think now with AI, outsource the thinking to solve a problem or to do things. If you're outsourcing your creativity to it, that makes me a little nervous for you, but there is that irresistible pull for efficiency, especially if you're trying to get a lot of things done in a short amount of time. Everyone else is now working because they're implementing AI. So there's this tension between how much of it do we teach so that people can stay current, similar to we teach them about how to use a 3D printer, how to use CAD modeling, and how much of it do we dedicate to rendering with a marker, making prototypes with cardboard and paper, while we already know we have a machine here that can print something in a matter of hours. Striking a balance between teaching just enough of both of these is going to be key for the future of education, because you want to prepare students to be fluent in what's cutting edge and what's going on in the industry. And at the same time, you want to give them the tools to know how to operate when they don't have access to those tools.
Right.
And one thing that comes to mind is this talk by Jack Dorsey that I think I mentioned it in a previous podcast, but he made me understand something about the relationship that we have when we use AI. And it's that when we ask it questions or when we input information, we got to ask ourselves, how much am I getting back? Because you're doing a lot, you're giving it a lot. How much are you actually getting back? And being mindful of that, because you are training these models, and in a way, the models themselves are making the connections that otherwise your own brain would make. So I think of it almost like I give food to another organism, and watch it eat and digest, and they keep the nutrients, but they give me kind of the satisfaction of, I don't know, like having it taken care of. Maybe I need to work on that metaphor a bit more, but the idea is basically that there is a price that you pay for convenience, right?
Of course. Yeah. You gotta to get something.
Right.
I feel that because in my personal experience with AI, when I'm like either generating ideas or just curious about, okay, this is the scope of work, let's put these inputs here to see what could come out, whatever. I felt myself doing more editing or maybe spending a little bit more time than I should on ideating, because it sometimes when you start, because the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
I think you start wondering, and then it becomes entertainment and not really helpful for the creative process. So I think a good analogy would be chewing gum and chewing food, like nutritious food. Yes, it's the same mechanical motion, like you are chewing, but the chewing gum, you're not swallowing and it's not nutritious. You spit it out and that's it. And I think I've made this analogy before, but that's why so far, that's what I think AI is chewing gum.
There's a pattern that I've noticed, Cesar, that when it comes to, for example, people, when the image generation models came out and people were like, wow, I'm not an illustrator, but suddenly I can make illustrations for my thing. And I'm sitting here just like looking at it and thinking, you're missing the point. That's not art. That's not that's not yes, it's an image, but it's not. That's not the reason.
It's for realistic, but
even beyond the styles, it's just like you miss out on the process of arriving to an idea. For a person that makes illustrations, the process is not tedious work. It's enjoyable. On the other hand, people who are not artistic in that world, they're praising these images and etc. Okay. And then there's another camp where now code can be generated by AI, and anyone who is not a developer can now create software. And then developers are saying like, that's not programming, that's copy and pasting. That's not saying here, like each camp is thinking that what they're seeing, yes, it's real and it's being made. Skipping through the process of creation comes at a cost. It comes at the cost of quality, possibly, and also expertise.
Right. Also, I was thinking that you're relying on AI to render your line drawings, and you're relying on the style that AI spits out for you. I think it could hinder you from finding your style, or it could hinder you from, hey, I'm just relying on what AI spits out for me, but I'm not necessarily going to explore other mediums. And sometimes those mediums are the process, the prototypes is what makes it exciting. It's what could also become the product. Sometimes the prototype becomes the product.
Yeah.
And by AI doing that for you, especially like AI cannot do a prototype for you, it cannot make a sample for you.
Right.
For now. And I think we'll be far from that. But
you seen the Tesla bots?
I have, but it's I don't know, it's weird. And I think the ones that I really enjoy are the conceptual, the last Blade Runner, which is an image projection to a real human.
Oh, that's interesting. I need to look up an image of that.
It's really cool because it's a very interesting take on, well, AI and on robots and all of that, because it's different. What they envision is different. It's nothing tangible. It's a projection of...
It's a hologram.
Yeah, a hologram. There you go.
Okay.
Oh, of this person or girlfriend, boyfriend. And, they come to you, they're present in your living space. When this persona wanted to interact with the character of the movie, she projected herself on this girl, and she looked like the girl.
Wow.
But then it's very interesting because you're still touching a human, like everything is real about it, but it looks different.
That talk about taking a prototype to the next level. Also, cinema itself it's sci-fi in particular. There's a book that I picked up on designing sci-fi interfaces or something like this. But the idea is that cinema has done such a great job of prototyping the future. And that's essentially what a good prototype does. It makes the future tangible in some way, whether it's a digital experience, a tappable prototype, or it's a physical shoe, which you deal a lot with in fashion. I also want to clarify, I want to make it clear to the audience that we are curious about AI. We are curious about where the industry is going, how the creative field is reacting to it, how it's coexisting with it. We don't want, we're not speaking from a negative point of view at all. We're just very curious and we have opinions on it. Because I think what I'm starting to see is a split division, right? Between people who are all in and are wanting to accelerate and just, let's break things and who cares about the consequences? And then there's people on the other camp who are like a bit more reserved and a bit more cautious, a bit more maybe mindful of the ethical consequences and questions maybe. And so I think we're living a very interesting time.
Totally.
As we're answering that.
I think another similar scenario to that years back when 3D printing technology became more, more accessible, easier. Now you can buy a 3D printer for, I don't know,
like $300.
$300. Yeah, you can. Now it's accessible.
Easy.
And before also, I'm sure there was another dilemma where the printing technology is going to replace almost every manufacturing process because now you can make things from scratch. No need to make molds, which is a very cost and timely consuming step in the manufacturing process. But you start thinking about it, and 3D printing will never be as fast as an injected EVA process. Yes, making the molds is expensive. Yes, there are some things to it, but once you do that and you dial the process and everything, and you can have a shoe within 30 minutes.
Wow.
With the injected EVA process. Now, if you go to the 3D printing route, it could be 8 hours. And it could be 8 hours if the print doesn't fail like halfway or in the printing process. And
the quality is not going to be the same.
Right. Quality, performance, everything, it's not going to be the same. So it's sure you are presenting me 3D printing as this, the one-stop solution to all your manufacturing needs. But then if you truly look at it from that perspective, okay, how long does it take to do something? Is it 30 minutes or 8 hours? And that's no guarantee. It's no guarantee.
Right.
If it doesn't fail, if it's fine, okay.
Dude, that's incredible.
Yeah. So, and I think that's the same scenario with AI. Like, sure, AI helps you speed up some things, generate more things. Like, yes, that's fine. But then is that, maybe instead of spending an hour on AI, what if I spend an hour making a sample or making...
Yeah, it's like you have to answer the question, what's the trade-off?
Right.
Like, where do you want to compromise? If you want to have speed, if you just want to test out an idea. By the way, full disclaimer, I'm using AI every single day and I'm using it in various parts of my workflow. I'm still trying to design a workflow that makes sense for myself.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, and I ask myself this all the time, do I want to generate an idea really quickly, or do I want to take my time with this process? It just depends. And goal is, right? I think this goes back to what we were talking about. Is your priority to just have something point at, or is your goal to create something new and
to validate an idea? Yeah, and you cannot validate an idea by another realistic rendering from AI. You can evaluate if the idea is good by evaluating the prototype, the sample. That was one of the reasons why for us, during my days at Yeezy, prototyping sample making was held as such a high regard, because what we evaluated was the product, not the idea of the product.
That's interesting.
So we would rather spend time making something quick but physical that we could try on, that we could touch, feel, and give us more information towards making the product, versus, oh, let's spend another, I don't know, 4 hours, more design reviews, more drawings, because you could get stuck there. Okay, how many more variations of the same idea can I do? So I think to avoid that, you just go straight into making it. And it doesn't have to necessarily be like, oh, let's 3D print something like out of the bat, let's try with 3D modeling. No, like you try to be resourceful, and you're trying to find things that like, okay, this is almost like what I'm doing. It's okay, I'm gonna use this asset.
Yeah.
Oh, this other element, this other part is like it. Or okay, the shape is there, but not the color, no problem. I'll spray paint it. So
Interesting.
you start morphing things into what you want to make. And sometimes in that process, you find out throughout that process other ideas, or maybe you found something out that you didn't know it looked good, and maybe you're happy with the prototype that you made, and then that's what goes. But not necessarily the design that you were originally thinking. So yeah, it's very open-ended process, but it's very rewarding.
Because prototypes change everything, right?
Yes. And I'm sure you felt, because you work in the 3D printing lab at SCAD, I'm sure it crossed your mind, projects or assignments were like in the lab, where I'm sure it crossed your mind saying, oh, you could make, there are alternatives of what you're trying to do in 3D printing, and 3D printing is not necessarily the way to do it, because you could, let's say, I don't know, go back in the bandsaw, cut it, I don't know, vacuum form something, and then that's your alternative to 3D printing. But I'm sure you came across projects where like, you don't need to 3D print this.
Yeah, if you're trying to, like one of my experiences when I was working for the studio in Copenhagen, where we were designing headphones at that time, before in-ear headphones, before the AirPods launched actually. And one of the things that I noticed is that I was working for the senior designer, the owner of the studio, and he used clay to mock up things quite quickly, because clay is a lot easier to, mock up sizes. Exactly. And then go from a sketch to a quick, manipulated clay model, and then going into CAD and then 3D printing, but learning along the way, because especially with something as built for the human body, like drawing it is one, putting it out into the real world, you learn a lot more from that. But I actually want to ask you about, going back to what you were talking about, while you were working at Yeezy as the head of samples, can you tell us a story about having to deliver something quickly? Or because I heard through the grapevine that you worked on the handle for the music video. What was that like?
Oh,
the giant sandals.
Yes, the giant sandals. It was a big project because it wasn't only the sandals, but the other pair of shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed help. And one of my friends is a costume maker. And she was like, yeah, she can help you, work with her. I'm like, yes. So we both, it was a really great working relationship, because she understood making and she understood what we're trying to do and everything, the workflow. And we troubleshoot a lot of things by simply having conversations or trying this, trying that when we were making the slide. And we both had understanding of making this. So we started with, okay, what are the dimensions of this slide? Because it had to be proportional to the costume. So we started their dimensions. Okay, we dialed that in, we printed on paper, just the outline of it. I'm like, okay, this looks about right, because we were initially some measurements that did not make sense. Like they were just overly out of proportion. And then we were like, okay, evaluating that, and then no, I think it's more like this size. And then we were like, okay, let's go with this size because we had a next day or something. And the way to turn around this project so fast is you have to work until 2 a.m., 3 a.m. and you have
That
to
sounds crazy.
But when you push for new ideas, to work on them until you're done. So if, let's say, we do something like some design or like some samples before we get to the final one, and then we come back the next day and then the following day, you could easily take a week doing that, or people get cold feet and they change their mind and they don't want to do it anymore. But it is important, projects or new ideas, to do them fast. And anyways,
wow,
we didn't have much time. So we had to work until late to get to a point where we could present the sample before the sample so that we could get it approved. This is what it is. And we actually, the first one that we made, it was too big. So we had to redo everything. Dial in the proportions, and then we started doing it again. But that first samples taught us a lot about assembly and things that we were going to run into. It helped us troubleshoot a lot of the details and bugs. So when we had to redo it again, it was like, oh, no problem. It's going to be faster because we already went through the process of making one. So it was a great project, great experience also working with someone, learning to quickly adapt to people's working styles and to work fast. So that was my experience behind that project.
That's wild. It's such an iconic design. I'd love to ask you more about this, what you mentioned. Can you go a little bit more in depth about that?
Yeah.
What does that mean for folks who maybe are not so familiar with physical things?
Right. The advantage of working with someone, and I think this is in general for anything, the advantage that I've seen of working with someone on the same task, you can troubleshoot together and you can have a dialogue with someone that has same expertise, same skill sets, but have a different perspective. So the amount of time that it would take me to do something, let's say, 2 days with another person, it would take me half of the time. Because what happens is when you're working alone and you're making something, you're going to run into issues. You're going to run into, the original idea that you wanted to try is actually not feasible because this material and this material don't bond well together. So we have to find an alternative. So you start having issues like that. And if I'm working by myself, or let's say on a corporate-like environment, I have to I run into an issue. I have to maybe write an email, or if the person is there and available, either you have a conversation with the person right then and then, or you have to schedule a meeting, next day. So working by yourself, and it just presents all these other barriers versus working with a person next to you. You troubleshoot together, and also the other person can help you prepare the things that you need for the next step.
Got it.
Hey, I'm finishing putting this sole on the shoe. Could you please prepare the next design elements going on the shoe, or whatever is the next step? The other person can help prepare it, so that when this is done, the other steps are ready to just be, put on, add on. And you work way faster. So it's faster.
Like perspective and also just the same level of expertise and technical skill.
Yeah.
Just amplifies your own capabilities. That's incredible. So overall, how long did it take? What was the project turnaround for idea to end result for this particular project, the Sandal project?
The Sandal project, we got the Sandal project on Tuesday afternoon. We gathered materials, and then Wednesday we spent it making it, because I believe, we spent it making it Wednesday, that one sample to get approval before we actually made the pair. And that fitting was on like Thursday, like at 6 a.m. or something like that, like 7 a.m.
Wow.
And that's when we found out it was not the right size, so we had to restart everything from Thursday morning. And while she was doing the slides, I was making the shoes.
Wow.
And because the music video was Friday afternoon.
Wow.
So we finished on Thursday, like at 2 a.m. we finished on Thursday.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like from Tuesday to Thursday, pretty much.
The adrenaline rush must have been crazy.
It wasn't bad because it was my first project of that nature.
Yeah.
And I was just so in shock of what was happening that it wasn't adrenaline. I was just like mind blown.
Really?
I was just like mind blown.
That's so crazy. That's amazing. That's wild. So at the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about several things there were several topics we were going to cover. One of them was prototyping. And I think it's very clear that there is an enormous amount of learning that one can get from just making one bad prototype, right? Purpose prototyping is to really just have a tangible experience with the idea. And you can't really overstate how much value a prototype can bring. But the next thing that we were going to cover is the art of a cold introduction. And we've dabbled on this topic before in the past, but to wrap up this episode, I want to dedicate some time to sharing experiences from both of our experiences on that level or that topic, because, you always mention this and we always talk about it. It's that if there is no money, there is no creative work. And if there is no outreach, if there isn't any marketing, if people don't know you exist, opportunities will not come, and, the funds to create new work won't be there. So that long setup is to say that it's very important to know how to come up in a DM or an email or whatever forms of communication you want to embark on, a written letter. How do you do it? How do you structure it?
Yeah. So my first thoughts are, when you're looking, let's say, when you're looking for a job, for a new project, for a new client, you start with your inner circle of friends to help you make an introduction. And you start, okay, maybe they don't know someone, or it's not the right time, whatever. Then you start going out, okay, acquaintances. From my acquaintances, who could help me find my next gig? And then you ask them for intros. Hey, have you heard of any opportunities? And the reason why I said you start there, it's because the easiest way to get something, however, I think the most overlooked approach, because we don't think, or we have pre-assumptions that, people are busy. Let me just email someone that doesn't know me instead of us spending energy and time on using
network.
your network to help you get what you want. So yeah, you start there, and then when you message people, just for me, what helps is you have to you're reaching out to that person, and then a quick blurb of your credentials, or if you have experience, of your educational background, interest, and why your desire to work with that person or do that project. And I think that's a good start. See where it goes.
That's a great strategy.
Yeah.
For sure. One thing that I've recently been experimenting more with is just as a freelancer, part of your job, you could argue that it's half of your job, if not a little bit more than that, to do outreach and to let people know that you're open for work when you're open for work.
Totally.
And so making those announcements on any social platform that you can, especially LinkedIn, is super important. And the return of a post of that nature is like, hey, I'm open for work. Here's my portfolio. Check it out. That also lets your network know that you're looking for work, and they'll start tagging you on potential opportunities that maybe you missed when you opened up the app, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really important. And I love that you highlight what a valuable thing it is to let your close people know that you're open for work, because you have to visualize it, but your network is connected to thousands of other networks, right? And you are degrees connected to someone who is looking for someone with your expertise. So it's really important to let people know.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to share is I have been chatting with someone who's really great at writing emails. It's due for their job.
Oh, wow.
And I've been getting some pointers on how to write an introduction let's say for someone who posted, hey, I'm looking for a designer, XYZ. How do you reach out to them? How do you stand out aside from just your work? And I think it comes down to having it be a series of wins. One is going to be the first line of contact, which is the subject line. It's going to be very important that you get that way that makes them want to choose clicking on you before anything else.
Yeah.
Because you have to think about it in that way.
Yes.
And then that I have learned to structure the message is to first make an introduction, why you're reaching out, introduce yourself, and then talk about why the role or this opportunity is something that caught your attention and you're interested in. List out why you're the person to talk to about this, and have them wanting to continue to read that message. And then lastly, give your credentials, give your credibility, and then, have that basic structure to get to the next step, hopefully, which is an introductory call. And being resilient as well. Like, there are so many people who are in our industry, perhaps, depending on what level you are in, who are also potentially applying for this job or whatnot, or this particular client. And you just have to keep having your presence be known in the digital space.
Yeah. And no, I was also going to say, if the person is local,
yes,
try to meet in person.
Absolutely. 100%.
And take them out for coffee or lunch, because everyone likes coffee and everyone has lunch.
Right,
so
right.
if if you have to think about lunch the next day because someone you out, oh, it's okay. Let's meet up.
Oh, yeah, it's wonderful. It's great. And there is information that there's so much information from real life human interactions that is missing sometimes in the digital interactions. Like maybe you're not comfortable maybe writing or whatnot, but you're a lot more comfortable in real person settings or real life setting. So just like putting yourself in a situation that's going to help you shine and gain friendships and gain acquaintances that could be there could be some mutual benefit there. Thought about that, just like solving someone's question of what am I having for lunch tomorrow as a valuable just way to establish an initial relationship, and also going to events around the city. A lot of these like online seminars, things like that I attended that were really cool for, people to connect. But I think a really good place to at this conversation, unless you have something else, Cesar, that you want to add. I think this was really good. And I'm looking forward to having another one next week.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna closing thought here. Look up templates online and see what works for you, tailor it, and send it. Like, a lot of the heavy lifting have been done for you.
Yeah,
templates are helpful.
I was gonna add to that too. Make yourself don't make this harder on yourself. Like, have a document with your, like, basically that template, right? So that you can work off of it each time that you have to do it and save yourself the time and just customize it for each person that you're reaching out for. Cognitive load, it makes it a lot easier for you. It's already quite a lot of work to make that effort. So wonderful. Yeah, why don't you close us out and we'll see them in. Yep.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. This is the Moodboard podcast. This is Cesar.
And this is Aaron.
And we are two creatives helping people unlock their creative potential by having meaningful and insightful conversations. Thank you for tuning in and see you next week.